We've all been there. You're out to dinner with your spouse, or child, or someone you supposedly love. You order a steak and french fries. They order 2 scrambled eggs and 1 beef, like a normal person. You get the bill and, holy cow, $227 for dinner? That must have been one holy cow. When you look at this receipt, I know you're feeling bad. But I'm about to make you feel even worse. Because when you pay this bill, in fact, when you pay for almost anything, you contribute to one of America's most regressive policy choices: sales taxes. Okay, please don't click away. I know that taxes aren't really interesting or fun, but I promise if you make it just a few more minutes into the video, I'll show you some very cute puppies. Okay? Deal. Before we get into what makes sales taxes so bad, we need to go over the basics. All taxes can be grouped into 3 categories: progressive, flat, and regressive. A flat tax is what it sounds like. Everyone pays the same tax regardless of their income. Under a progressive scheme, the higher your income, the higher percentage of your income goes towards taxes. The federal income tax is a pretty good example. The more money you make, the higher tax you pay. A regressive tax is basically the opposite. The poorer you are, the more of your wealth goes in towards paying taxes. There aren't really any good examples of regressive taxes in the real world because they're just a terrible idea. There's no good reason to tax those least able to pay more than those most able to pay. Now, on the surface, sales taxes are a flat tax. Everyone pays the same 2 or 5 or 7% depending on where you live. It's not like the self-checkout machine asks you how much you make. But that doesn't mean that all families are burdened equally by sales taxes. Low-income families spend a much higher percentage of their income on essential goods that are subject to a sales tax. And as a result, they end up paying a greater percentage of their wealth into taxes than their wealthier peers. Let's look at groceries as an example. According to data collected by the USDA, low-income families spent on average $5,000 on food in 2022. That represents about 30% of their income. The wealthiest 20% of families spent more money on groceries, more than $15,000 per household. But because they make so much more, that only represents 8% of their income. For low-income families, a larger share of their income goes towards things that are subject to a sales tax, and so that tax ends up burdening them more. And look, sales taxes aren't all bad. Because wealthy Americans spend so much more money than anyone else, they do pay a larger total amount into sales taxes. So on net, money flows from rich to poor. That's why many policy analysts, even people who do care about tax equity, think that sales taxes are a good idea. Plus, virtually every state is reliant on sales taxes. According to a report by the Tax Foundation, sales taxes made up 32% of all state tax revenues in the 2020 fiscal year. But that's part of the problem. States rely too heavily on sales taxes. Earlier this year, the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy published the 7th edition of its Who Pays report. Now, I'm gonna nerd out on this specific report for the next minute or so. If that doesn't interest you, please just look to your left for that promised adorable in-flight entertainment. The Who Pays report is an amazing accomplishment. To make it, researchers read through the tax codes of all 50 states. That alone is crazy, because reading this one script makes me feel like my head is about to explode. But then, they calculate how these taxes actually affect folks of different income levels. That might not sound like a lot, but it takes an enormous amount of work to review this much economic data. That's why they're only able to publish these reports once every few years. And here's the best part. It's completely free to the public. Honestly, you should check it out and learn a little bit more about your state's tax code. It'll be the first link in the description. Alright, have those of you in the back enjoyed your puppy break? Great, let's get back to it. The 2024 Who Pays report has some shocking findings. Due in large part to their over-reliance on sales taxes, most state tax systems are incredibly unfair. 34 states tax the poorest 20% at a higher rate than any other income group. And in 41 states, the top 1% of earners are taxed at the lowest rates. All told, 44 states' tax systems are regressive. They put the most burden on the poorest Americans, exacerbating income inequality. And this issue affects states on all sides of the aisle. Of the 10 states that most burden low-income households, some lean left, some lean right, and more are somewhere in the middle. And many states are actively trying to increase their reliance on these regressive taxes. In Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin is attempting to pass tax changes that would raise sales taxes in order to pay for cuts to income taxes. Mississippi's Governor Tate Reeves, who looks like if a marshmallow could get into Yale, he's tried to pass a $500 million cut to income tax, while residents are stuck paying one of the highest sales taxes in the entire US. And in Nebraska, some lawmakers are trying to replace all state and local taxes with a sales tax. There have actually been lots of tax cuts in recent years. Between 2021 and 2023, 26 states cut their personal or corporate income tax rates. And it's important to note that these tax cuts, they're not refunds or one-time rebates. These are permanent reductions in the amount of taxes states can charge. This will cost states more than $120 billion by 2028. Now, states could afford to cut taxes in recent years because the federal government has been handing out billions and billions of dollars of COVID relief. But many of these programs have stopped, and once this money runs out, states will be relying on sales taxes even more than before the pandemic. And there's no one solution to this problem. Because sales taxes are levied by states, one nationwide law can't make things better. But at the same time, it's easier to make your voice heard in your town hall or state house than on Capitol Hill. And advocacy groups around the country are taking on the challenge of reforming the tax code. In Mississippi, the nonprofit group One Voice is pushing for a 6% income tax bracket on the state's highest earners. And in Colorado, students successfully lobbied state representatives to introduce a bill to eliminate state sales taxes on textbooks and other products. And public opinion is on their side. In one AP NRRC poll released in January, 62% of respondents said that their state sales taxes are too high. Although, to be fair, similar percentages of folks said that their income and property taxes were also too high. I guess people really just don't like taxes. But for those of y'all who stuck around, I've got one more treat for you. Let's go through the ranking of American tax codes, from least to most regressive. And since I've got some extra space on the left side of the screen, let's bring back the puppies. So best on the list is actually the District of Columbia, but DC ain't even a state, so that doesn't count. In first place with an asterisk then is Minnesota, which is fitting since I feel like almost anything that comes from Minnesota comes with an asterisk. Moving on down, we've got South Carolina coming in as the 33rd worst state, which is a surprisingly good rating from the state that elected Lindsey Graham. Right in the middle of our list, we've got North Dakota and Kansas, which, yeah, okay, I can't really think of two more average states. And now here we are in firmly evil territory with the likes of Alaska, Oklahoma, and Arizona. I don't really know what happens in those states, and I don't want to find out. And so topping our list, the most regressive tax code in America is Florida. How did you already know? Thanks for watching. Please click like and subscribe if you made it this far, and if you disagree with the state rankings, please make yourself heard in the comments. As you all know, YouTube commenters are extremely reasonable people. Most of them have PhDs in economics and public policy, so they really know their stuff.